This is going to be a pinned TikTok to kind of explain what this account is going to cover, because some of my TikToks are going to cover just bits and pieces of things, but I thought I would do an overview of what I'm aiming for here. So first of all, I use these goofy filters because I'm not in a place where I'm comfortable sharing my face. That's the explanation for the goofy, cartoonish filters. So my goal with this really is just to share things that I'm learning in therapy, as well as other mental health related things or psychology related things that I'm learning through like reading books or just other ways that I'm learning and healing, and to kind of give you a rundown of the types of things that I deal with or will be covering. My official diagnoses include general anxiety disorder, PTSD, and ADHD. As a teenager, I was also diagnosed with depression, but I went through a new evaluation last year and did not qualify for depression anymore, which is kind of cool. With my primary therapist, I've talked a fair amount about how cptsd isn't really a diagnosis in the DSM, but how that diagnosis kind of fits me as well, because my PTSD is caused by some acute trauma and some complex trauma, like lower level things like, like emotional neglect, where there's not so much like specific events that I can pull out in all cases, but there's definitely still effects of trauma from things like that. Some of what I might talk about at times would be my history of self-harm. I self-harmed from the time I was like a young kid, like 7, until like my mid to late teens. For the record, I'm in my early 30s now. I know it's hard to tell with this filter, but so I've been self-harm free for a long time in terms of like literal self-injury, but I still kind of am learning about how I have other patterns kind of related to that, like being excessively critical, being an internalizer, things like that, just blaming myself where it's not necessarily the most accurate thing to be doing. So I'm still dealing with kind of the side effects of that, even though I haven't actually struggled with self-harm itself in quite a long time. I had SA in fairly early childhood, and kind of just recently I've realized that some of my sexual trauma is not just like the literal SA, in terms of like a physical abuse type form of SA, but also like living with a step-parent who was inappropriate verbally has caused me quite a lot of sexual related trauma, even though like I wasn't like touched by them. So I don't know, maybe kind of like sexual harassment almost would be kind of a way to label that. And I have an anxious attachment style, attachment trauma, lots of emotional neglect, some like lower level emotional abuse from childhood. My kind of default trauma responses are usually freeze and fawn. Something I deal with in therapy is discussing how I really lost access to my fight response or to my healthy anger. So that contributed to blaming myself for things where I should have been angry at other people and so on. I have been in a relationship since I was in my teens that is loving and healthy. So yeah, it's kind of like my high school sweetheart, and so I had done some kind of like natural healing and improvement just through being in a healthier relationship and trying to learn how to communicate in healthy ways with somebody who like loves me and cares about me and it just is better to me than the type of treatment that I experienced in childhood. But I might also talk about his mental health at times. Last year he was diagnosed with bipolar 2, like as in type 2 bipolar. which was news to us, but like makes so much sense in hindsight. And I think that's like a diagnosis that is not talked about nearly enough and is still like really terribly understood. There's so much stigma when it comes to bipolar and just incorrect understanding of what bipolar is. So I get kind of passionate about that. I might end up sharing about that some. Yeah, and so those are kind of the main topics that I plan to cover. Kind of trying to check my list here. People pleasing is also like a long-standing coping method that I am trying to work on, just kind of like finding my voice and setting boundaries and those sorts of things as well. And all of this was started about 2 years ago. We started therapy. My partner started a few months before I did, and I saw how much it was helping him, and so I decided to try as well. And we started couples therapy. And the goal of all of this really was just to put us in a situation where we are as healthy as possible going into parenting, because we do want to try to conceive probably next year. And we just really wanted to be as healthy as possible because we don't want to pass on generational trauma to our kids. And so it's been a really interesting journey, and it's something I've become pretty passionate about, and I enjoy learning from other people's healing journeys and mental health experiences, and so I thought I would start sharing mine and my partner's as well. I look forward to sharing more with you guys. Feel free to follow if this is the kind of content that you think would interest you.